Okay, we're right on time. I will say we are holding the Tzurba Rabbanan. We are on page. We're going to start. I will say on page 84. We went through this sugya really quick last time, so I would like to go a little slower over here. Okay, so we're talking about trapped children as being one of the cases of emergency. So two things to remember. Anything that's pekuach nefesh, you can remember halal Shabbat for. Anything that is safek pekuach nefesh, right? We're not entirely sure, but perhaps it could be a pekuach nefesh situation. One is mahalel Shabbat for it. So one of the cases that's brought down in Masechet Yomam is a case of a young child that the door locks. The door locks on him. Okay, so the kid goes into the room and the door slams shut and it's locked. Now, the Gemara says you can break the door and you can take him out. Now, I just want to remind you something. Not so simple just to break a door. First of all, you don't know exactly where the child is standing behind the door. Sometimes it's a small room. He doesn't have a place where to go. Sometimes the child's standing right in front of the door because he's trying to come out. So if you're going to bust the door open, breaking the door open, you're not solving the pekuach nefesh situation. That means sometimes in order to open that door, even though the Gemara says you can break it, sometimes you're going to have to call a locksmith or something like that to open the door or whatever it is to get it, because you got to do it safely to save the child. So just don't take that word, that shuvra, that you can break it. Literally, I'm going to go break down the door. It means to open the door. Okay? Let's say you can take him out. And the one who's zariz, who does it very quick, you don't have to go to Beit Din to take this kid out. You know it's a pekuach nefesh situation, a possible pekuach nefesh situation. Okay? And not only that, and even if you break down the door in a way that you can use it later, say I'm breaking it down, but they have the door, and maybe I'm going to cut it down so I can have these pieces. I'm not going to cut it haphazardly, right? That he cannot use his pieces again. I'm going to cut it in a way that I can reuse it in a separate place afterwards. And guess what? That is also mutar, says the Gemara. You're allowed to open it in a way that even these boards can be used later. Now, the Gemara does say that even though it's tzricha to teach us this case, why? We're on page 84. It's tzricha, it's still to teach us this case. Why? Because Maisi, you can say, the child behind the door, I'll talk to the child. Tell him a story. I'll tell him 2 stories. I'll tell him 3 stories. I'll play with him games from behind the door, And maybe I don't have to open the door. Maybe I can go the whole Shabbat. Gemara says no. Still in such a case, since it could become a danger. You don't know what a 2-year-old kid's going to do behind the door. A 3-year-old kid's going to do behind the bathroom door. You don't know what's in the medicine cabinet, where they're going to reach to, where they're going to get to. If they're stuck somewhere else where there's a knife or something like that, don't think I'm going to talk to him behind the door. It's still considered a safek of pekuach nefesh and open up the door. Okay? Even though you think you can talk to him and stuff like that, and maybe you do have to talk to him until the guy comes to open the door, right? It's going to take some time. End of the day is that if it's a questionable pekuach nefesh, a person can open that door. It says the Rambam, source 36. So if the door was locked before a child, and once you can break the door and you can take him out, even though he breaks it into pieces of wood, right, which are appropriate for work. That you can do malacha afterwards. Why? Shema, maybe he's going to become scared and die. And therefore, you're allowed to open the door. As long as it is safek, pekuach nefesh, we're worried about him being in a dangerous situation, can open that door. Now, what age are we talking about? The Ma'aseh halach is going to be, you have to look what the situation is. The kid's already at a mature age, and he's able to be calm and stuff like that, then you have no right to bust open that door. Right? The kid he's not in the class of safek nefashot. He's not in pekuach nefesh at all. Because he's an adult kid. He's 13, he's 14, he knows how to relax, I'm going to take it easy. Well, let's say he can't. There are some kids who are claustrophobic; they can't be in small places. There are some kids who have feelings of missing out. There are some kids who have all sorts of mental instabilities. There are some kids cannot be trusted, right? Even though they're older. So I call it you have to look at who the kid is there, what's the situation, how long is the time, and all like that. But Derek Klau, Rav Yaakov Emden wants to say that 6-year-old, that's the real cutoff point. Under 6 and under, he can't be trusted to be alone. Someone above 6, according to Yaakov Emden, perhaps he would be okay to be left there, even though the door is locked. But again, halakha today is really call the fi'ayin. You have to look at the situation. The kid's going to panic, even if he's older. You can break down the door. All right. Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata talks about another case. We should never hear of this. It's also important to remind everybody, well, Hashem sent you children. Hashem gave you all children. And guess what? Part of having children is having responsibility for that children. And that means that we should not be able to walk outside and in the middle of the night and find little kids walking around without their parents or an adult nearby. And even though you think the neighborhood is safe and stuff like that, it is a danger. And too many times, we've had too many situations, kids going missing, and everyone's looking for them, and all sorts of situations like that. And therefore, you have an achrayut to watch your children and to know where they are, not only at night, but at all the times. How many kids have gone off the derech because the parents weren't paying attention to where they were? It's important to know where your children are at all times. If they're in the yeshiva, they're in the yeshiva. If they're home, they're here. Who's they're going to? Where they are. We don't want to be dealing with missing children or Hashalom being in the wrong place. So what happens, Hashalom, on Shabbat, there is a missing child. Kid's 9 years old. No one's seen him. Okay? Again, I call it Fi'ayin. This kid always goes away and he comes back 2-3 hours. You have to know. But it's not. I'm not saying that's good. All right? It shouldn't be happening that way. But that's what he does. He's around. We're not worried about him. But now it's coming a time that you're already worried. All right? Or if it's a family, the kid never leaves. And now all of a sudden he's missing. So I call it Fi'ayin. The child goes missing. And there is cause. There's cause for concern. All right? Or a cotton shenimtza. You found a cotton walking around. And I have to tell you, I found in my lifetime 3-4 kids in different places that I've been just walking around, scared, out of their mind. They don't know where they are. I have to take them. Baruch Hashem wasn't on Shabbat. I take them. I say, calm down. Do you know a number? This and that. Call the police. Call someone, the sheriff, something like that, so they can find who this kid is. More than once has happened to me, where I found these kids just roaming around. So if you find a kid on Shabbat, you don't know who he is. He's scared. You're allowed to, says Shmish, you call the Mishnah, you call the police. Call the police for the missing child or the child that's found in order to calm him down and go into calm his family. It's a sakana. Because the kid is panicking. He's gunning out of control. And it could be a case of pikuach nefesh. You call the police. This is serious things. We're not to take this lightly, I will tell you. To be parents and to parent your children. And we mentioned this in the past, and we'll mention it again because, unfortunately, we still see it. It's very nice that everyone wants to take an afternoon nap, but that doesn't mean on Shabbat afternoon. It doesn't mean the kids should have no supervision. Okay? The best way to do it is the spouses can take turn. I'll take an early afternoon nap, you take a late afternoon nap. Someone is watching the kids, someone knows who they are, where they are, what they are. I've heard there's situations of they have play dates. Both parents are sleeping, and 1,000 kids are in the house. Nobody knows what's going on. Boys, girls, everything flying all over. Who knows what's happening there? We should never hear of such things. There has to be a seder here. There has to be someone there, an adult supervision. Okay. Says the Rabbi Victor Nebenzahl in his sefer over here that if a child were missing and he may panic, should violate Shabbat, even when there's no concern due to cars. You're in a Haredi city in Eretz Yisrael. There's no cars going around. She's not going to get hit by a car. There's no terrorists coming on. There's nothing like that. Even so, it's a dangerous situation. And it's not saying here, but once we're already on the safety of children, we'll mention it as well. That you don't know anybody. You think you know me? You don't know me. I don't know you. You don't know me. You don't know me. We have a responsibility as parents to watch our children from people who may be taking advantage of them, whether financially, emotionally, physically. doing something to their body and stuff like that. It's too many times, we've heard too many stories. Parents have responsibility to watch their children, know where they are, who they're spending time with, and how they're spending time with them. And you should have conversations with your children that they should be able to come to you and tell you if someone is touching them inappropriately or something like that. This needs to be done. They have to be able to identify their body, where they are, and what's happening to them, and be able to describe that to their parents, and feel free to describe it to their parents. You don't want them to be ashamed and not say these things. It's happened way too many times to count that we can't discard it. So what we're talking about, safety of children, just wanted to mention that as well. Okay, now we're moving on to the next topic, and we're on page 86. And another safety issue on Shabbat. What about if there is a public hazard? Okay, not necessarily a pekuach nefesh situation, all right, but more like a hazard that can cause damage, hurt, or something to a person on Shabbat. So what can you do about that on Shabbat? So we have here, he brings a Gemara Masechet Shabbat in source number 40 on Mem Bet Amud Aleph in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Amar Ravina, Hilkach kotes b'reshut rabim. If there is a thorn in the reshut rabim, a real reshut rabim, you're not allowed to carry in there. You can't make an erev in there, right? So what does he do? There's a public hazard. This thorn can hurt people. What do? Molicho pachot pachot me'arba amot. He takes it less than 4 amot. Carrying is 4 amot, right? So I'm doing it less than 4. Pick up and go, less than 4, less than 4, less than 4. All I did was a derabanan. And because it is a public hazard, I can do that derabanan on Shabbat in order to prevent damage and harm to others. Okay? Now, karmalit, and if it was in a karmalit, which is really a reshut yachid d'oraita, but the Rabbanan say they have some similarities to reshut rabim, so that's where we put an erev and stuff like that. In this place, even if there's no erev there, it's a karmelit. So the oraita, it's not a problem to carry there. Afilu tuva, you can even take it many amot away at one time. You don't have to stop every 4 amot. Okay, you move that public hazard out of the way. So there's reshut on Shabbat to remove a public hazard from where people are. Let's take a look. The Orchot Chaim over here writes, what about broken shards? Okay, guy had a keli, and this is I would assume this is something happening in his house. So it's not just in the Reshut Rabim or in the Carmelit. The guy had a nice vase, right? And someone knocked it on Shabbat. It fell and it cracked. Well, Hashem, we all have children, we all have people, and we also get tired from times, and stuff fell from our hands and broke. And the whole kitchen and the whole living room now has little pieces of glass. So it's a public hazard. It's a hazard. It's very dangerous. And you better clean up very well, because the kids they crawl on the floor and they're gonna go into those little crevices that you were too lazy to sweep up. So make sure you look good. So he writes over here, usually, now you have another issue here. Let's say it was a keli that was usable, but now it broke, you can't use it. And now it's another issue of mukteh in Shabbat. Okay, so let's read what he writes over here. Shards of vessels may only be moved to use them for some purpose. If they're unusable, you cannot carry them. So here, now this glass plate broke, it's all over the 4 million pieces of glass. I can't really move them because they're mukteh. The yesh omrim, she'af pishein kilal natilin imhem b'makom hanezek kigon hashulchan u'be'emtza habayit mutar lefnotan. One can remove them so that they would not be an issue of causing someone harm. And this is similar to like the akutz b'karmelit says the Orchot Chaim. So here you have it broken, something in the house. It's a hazard. You're allowed to move it out of the way to collect it and put it in the garbage can in order so it wouldn't damage people. Shulchan Aruch, source 42. Kol hakelim shenishberu afil mishabat muter letatel shevreihem. you're allowed to move their broken pieces. That's as long as those broken pieces can still be used for something. But if they can't be used, you cannot move it. It says the Rama, if it's broken in a place that can cause a hezek, can cause a damage, right? You have the glass, or in a place where you're walking, you're allowed to take them away. So people should not become damaged by them. Okay, so even though it's mukseh, even though you're not allowed to touch it, but since it's a public hazard, it's dangerous, you can move it on Shabbat. Throw it out. Now, the Mishnah Berurah says this is only for glass. But if it's cheres, if it's earthenware, it's not so common, and then maybe not so dangerous. So then maybe you can't pick it up with your hands, but then you're allowed to do tiltul minatzad, tiltul beguf, right? Moving the muksah with something else, or moving it with your body and not with your hands. In cases like that, that's what the Mishnah Berurah wants to say. That again, you have to look at the dangerous situation. If it could be classified as a public hazard, then a person would have to move it on Shabbat because you don't want someone to get hurt. Now, in the Yalkut Yosef, he brings another interesting case. I think we mentioned it last time, but let's see if we bring it inside this time. He writes over here. All right, here we are. Okay. 182. He brings a case of a guy finds a bomb on Shabbat. I think we talked about this, right? He finds a bomb on Shabbat. And the question was, if he stays there, he can tell everybody, don't come here, don't come here, don't come here. And what did we say? He doesn't have to do that. What can he do? He can call. He can call to take care of it. Why? Because there's no responsibility for you to stand there all day and tell someone not to walk there. Okay? It's a case where you need to get someone involved, and you can call someone involved. We're going to get more into this shortly. Not sure what I wrote here. 182, but it's not here. I must have got the wrong page. Okay, here we are. All right, so this is just about the broken glass. If a glass breaks, we're supposed to remove the broken shards on Shabbat, either by sweeping them to the side or picking them up and disposing them in the garbage. This is a special dispensation, so the people should not hurt themselves with broken glass. If a utensil may be handheld, okay, fine, that's already something else. All right, so here you have the halacha, the maaser rabotai, something that breaks, something that's now a danger. It is a hazard. You have special reshut on Shabbat, pick it up and get rid of it. Next. Okay. Now we come to a different case, I will tell you. We have here someone is in front of a hot piece of metal that can start a fire. And he wants to take it out. Or if he has a hot piece of wood that can turn into a coal, and he wants to take it out on Shabbat. So let's take a look inside the Gemara over here. Amar Shmuel, we're on page 87, source 44. Amar Shmuel, Mechabin gachelet shel metechet bereshut harabim. So the guy's in the Reshut Harabim, and there's a hot metal piece there. It's a public hazard. Danger. Someone get hurt from it. It's not a fire, whatever it is. So it's a public hazard. So he writes, Mechabin gachel shel metecha b'shut harabim. One can extinguish this burning metal. Bishvil shelo yizoku barabim. so that the public not be harmed by it. Again, public hazard, something very hot metal, you can extinguish it. Aval lo gachelet shel etz. But a gachelet shel etz, so a piece of burning wood, you cannot extinguish it on Shabbat. Even though it's in the Reshut HaRabim and it's a danger, you cannot extinguish the burning piece of wood. Burning piece of metal, yes. Burning piece of wood, no. What's the difference? Very good. So, first of all, where is the Doraita issue of being mechabin a piece of metal or piece of wood? What is the issue of extinguishing a fire? Making it to a coal. Exactly. When you extinguish metal, are you making it to a coal? No. There's no Doraita issue over here. In the Mikdash, what was it? Possibly, yeah, the wick, you're saying? I'm not 100% sure, so, but that makes sense. But it's basically in order to make a benefit, when you take it out, you're making the coal good, right? So metal, there is no coal being made. Therefore, you can extinguish. There's no Doraita there. But the wood, if you can extinguish the wood, then you're doing the Doraita Melacha of making a coal. So maybe that's the issue over here. Now, but one second. This is all alluding to what? We have a principle that what? B'malacha she'enat tzicha legufa. A malacha that's not done for that reason. Right? I'm not extinguishing this burning piece of wood in the Reshut HaRabim to make a coal. I'm extinguishing it. I want to extinguish it. Why? I don't want it to hurt people. So this comes back to that principle. So let's take a look at Gemara. Rabbi Shimon, it's Nami. Rabbi Shimon says, that what? It's mutar to do it on Shabbat. If you're not doing it for the reason that you usually do it for, not doing that malacha, for that intention, you're allowed to do that malacha. So Rabbi Shimon would say you're allowed to take out the etz. So why are you not letting me take out the etz? So the Gemara says, "B'davar she'ei mitkaven savar lo Rabbi Shimon." Shmuel holds the davar she'ei mitkaven. That's like Rabbi Shimon. But melacha she'einat tzricha legufa savar la Rabbi Yehuda. Melacha she'einat tzricha legufa, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, and it says that it's asur. That's the way the Rambam passed it. That what? That even though I'm not doing it to make a call, I'm still making the call, right? You're not allowed to do that on Shabbat. So take a look now in the Shulchan Aruch. We're on page 88, and says the Shulchan Aruch as follows: if you had a gachel, if you have a coal left in the public place that people sharabim nizukim ba that can get damaged from it, yachol lechabota, you can take it out. Ben imhi shel matechet, ben imhi shel etz, whether it is metal or wood, says the Shulchan Aruch, you can take it out. The Rambam also b'shel etz, but the Rambam will not let you take out the wood. Why? Because it all depends on this case of molacha and gufa. The Rambam holds a Rabbi Yehuda and would say you can't do it, whereas most other Rishonim say no. The Nachas Rabbi Shimon, and you're allowed to do molacha she'en tzricha gufa, especially for a public issue. And then it's a isur d'Rabbanan. It's not a deoraita, and you would be allowed to do it. So the Mishnah Berurah, he ranks as follows: that this applies when one has no way to remove it to another place, but the public do not frequent. Otherwise, it's better if he can remove it out. And we saw this a couple of times already. Shut off the light. No, rather take the light out to somewhere else. If you have this fire, you want it out of the public, instead of extinguishing it, take it out somewhere else. So you're not going to deal with the deoraita of extinguishing it. That's what the Mishnah Berurah wants you to do. So we saw you can take it less than 4 amot at a time. Less than 4, less than 4, less than 4, less than 4. You're not gonna get an issue of a deoraita here. Again, it's only going to be a rabbanan. That's already a different story. As one is only liable for extinguishing on a biblical level if one extinguishes in order to make charcoal. But by default, extinguishing is a malacha she'ein tzricha l'gufa. It's only rabbinically prohibited. So when it could be physically harmed, the public could be physically harmed, they did not impose this decree. But if it was only mammon, only money, then it would be asr. The Rambam would say even wood, even when it's potential damage, because the wood is malacha she'ein tzricha l'gufa that you're causing when you're turning out, it would still be asr. And says the Rambam, what the halacha? It says the Mishnah Berurah, who's the halacha like? In the Shulchan Aruch, he brought two deot, he brought two opinions, right? It says halacha kedat rishona. Halacha is like the first opinion that was brought in the Shulchan Aruch. That what? That if you see a wood or a metal piece of coal that it's in you're allowed to either move it or extinguish it as necessary in order to avoid public harm. We would say it's derabanan, and therefore a person would be allowed to do that.
Usually he says like yesh omrim. No one's a second. Over here it says the Rambam itself.
Yeah, he just says Rambam also shulitz. Okay, right. He doesn't say it as a yesh omrim, right? Because then you have to deal with the stam yesh, and do we go with the stam and go with the yesh and all the other stuff that go with that? Okay. Shulchan Aruch Harav. Shulchan Aruch Harav. So he writes over here that those who say the malacha she'ein tzricha l'gufa is only derabanan, that even a wooden coal you can take out, no problem. It's all derabanan. But he writes, and that's not halacha. He writes also, but someone should be, instead of just taking it out, it's wood. I mean, I have this first opinion to go with. It's better to look. The Mishnah Berurah said to remove it. Don't extinguish it if you don't have to. And a person should be a little bit careful and be choshet for the psak of the Rambam. All right, here's an example. Here's an example of a modern day public hazard. Page 89. Electric cables that ripped, and now we're in the middle of the street. It happens. Where did it happen?
Look on the floor. You're going to see something that looks like arteries on the floor. One of the main wires fell on the floor, and the amount of electricity burned.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. So let's say Shalom, it happened on Shabbat. The electric wires. Wow. So let's take a look. Source 48, page 89. Shminat Shabbat Kilchata. Bringing down from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Listen to what he says. Chuti chashmal. You have the strings of electricity, the wires. Shenaflu berachov. The yesh chashash. Shiga behem adam. That someone might come to touch it. What do? It's mutar to call the electric company to cut off the current. According to the letter. Now, what can a guy do? Guy can say, I can maybe stay there all day. If anybody come by, I say, hey, there's electric wires. No. You don't have to do that. You're not obligated. So they shouldn't touch it. You don't have this. You don't have this chiyuv. But if you want to stand there and don't want to call the telephone company or the cops or whatever it is, that's nice. But the Meikar Hadin, you have no obligation to stand all day warning everybody. Right. You can't You can't control everybody. You're standing there, but what about the guy from the other side? And what about if I'm talking to this guy and that guy over there, right? So he brings over here, in the Hara over here, from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, he says, we see the Gemara, when it talks about the coals, that it's saying you can extinguish the coals. Why didn't the Gemara say, let him stand there all day? And tell everybody, don't come here. Why did the Gemara not say that? It must be there is no obligation to do that. Right? Your obligation is to live a normal life. And it's not normal to stand on Shabbat and tell people, don't walk here.
Unless there's like an hour left of Shabbat.
Say again?
There's an hour left of Shabbat.
It's an hour left of Shabbat.
Then it's better, also, I guess, to stay there.
It depends on everything depends on the situation. But again, like David here was saying, you don't know. You're going to talk to this guy on this side. You know if someone's going to come from the other side. If it's on the dead end and the end of the block and you can see everybody, it's one thing. But if you can't control the whole situation, then it really is the thing that showed. And a person would have to reach out. Okay, look at this on page 90. Here he brings, the Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata brings, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who he says as follows. Let's say there's a sick person, okay? And he says, bring me a lamp. Turn on this lamp. Turn on this fire. Now, I know that the guy next door has a fire and a lamp. Can I turn on the fire, or should I go to the guy next door and take the lamp from him? I will tell you. You came here to sleep, go to your bed, you're going to sleep better. You hear? Let's learn. Now, this guy, they're asking him to turn on the light on Shabbat. The guy is Mekuach Nefesh case. But his friend right next door has a lamp. Do I need to go to my friend and take the lamp? Maybe he's sleeping. Maybe he needs a lamp for something else.
You won't see from this one.
Okay, let's say there's a sick person and he needs food for Shabbat, and they want me to cook food for him on Shabbat. I'm allowed to cook. But I know that the next door neighbor has food. Can I go to him and say, give me food instead of me cooking the food on Shabbat? He's saying, I want to eat. So the question is, do I have to go to my neighbor, or can I make food on Shabbat for him? So Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says that what? He says that, first of all, he says, the Shmiras Rebbe wrote this, and I heard the people were arguing with him, and he brought down some of the names of those who were arguing with him. And he says, Va'anochi, I'm going to stand, Va'yamishmarti, I'm going to stand, and I'm not going to give in on this. The halacha is, you don't have to go next door to get the light. You don't have to go next door to get the food from the other guy. The guy is sick, cook it. The guy is sick, you can turn on the lights. You don't have to go somewhere else to get it. And he brings the proof. He says there's a halacha that's written that what a kohen finds a mitzvah, and he can either pay someone to bury it, or he can do it himself. And he doesn't want to pay. Halacha is he can go and be mitameh himself and go and do it. Why? He's not supposed to become tameh. Let him have to pay. No, he does not have to pay. He can do it himself. Become a tameh. So says Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, it's the same thing over here. We're not going to say, go and bother that guy. Go use your money. Go do this. No, the guy's saying he needs food. Now he has a din of pikuach nefesh, and it overrides Shabbat, and one does not obligate to lose anything of his own, and therefore he's allowed to do everything he needs to do for this sick individual. Light him a fire, make the food for him, whatever is necessary. He does want to say, though, but what happens if it's your family member? Okay? What happens if your family member? You're obligated anyway to spend money on them, right? So in this case, if you have food, perhaps you should not be making new food, right? Because it's your family member and they're sick. Anyway, you have to give them to eat. So you already have food for them. Why are you going and making new food? So Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach wants to say, if it's your family that you're directly responsible for, then maybe you can't make, if you have the candle already, you can't make your own candle, another candle for him. If you have the food already, you can't make more food for him because you already have direct responsibility and you have those things beforehand. Obviously, if you need something special or something else, it's a different story. But if you already have it, you cannot say, it's a difficult nefesh and I can do everything now. He wants to say when it comes to family, it is a little different. Okay, fine. So that is on that din over here. And I just want to look on the back how he puts this in. So one need not incur financial loss or great inconvenience to avoid violating Shabbat to save lives of others. That's the principle that came out over here. You don't have to spend money and you don't have to come into great inconvenience in order to save someone else's life. You can do whatever needs to be Mechal Shabbat in order to save their life without having to go to a great inconvenience or spend money. Shmiyat Shabbat Kichata in source 50 tells us just a summary, pretty much the principles relevant to emergencies on Shabbat. When there's a situation which an emergency is liable to bring are many and vary, it's impossible to predict them in advance. There's no way I can go through every case of emergency. And there's always a different type of emergency. So here are the great rule. The great rules, klal gadol b'yadenu, v'hai b'hem, v'lo she'emut b'hem. Okay? You have to live with them. Adam nivra b'olam hazeh mutar alav l'shmor taryag mitzvot. והנה התורה דורש ממנו לשמור מצוות אלא כאשר יש בפילתן ושום סכנה לחייו. The Torah does not make you keep the mitzvot when you have a sakana to your life. You don't have such a thing. But not only you don't have to, it's opposite. Mitzvah adam la'avor al mitzvah Torah. It's a mitzvah to go against the Torah. When it's makom sakana, right? Levad mishlosh averot hamurot shalehem ne'emar yihareg ve'al ya'avor. Except for the 3 averot that you have to let yourself be killed and not transgress them, which are murder, shfichat damim, right, avodah zarah, and gilui arayot, improper sexual relationship, murder, and avodah zarah. Everything else, if you have to, because of sakana b'michalel, that's it. That's the halacha. Overvad shinatzam sakana or safek sakana, right? And this is in a case where there's a real sakana or a chance of having a sakana. Okay, then and so too he has to save his fellow as well. So that is a very important general concept. When it comes to saving someone, don't become, the most religious guy to figure out, I can't do this, I can't do that. You got to save the guy, you save him, right? Unless it has to do with those 3 sins. Okay, he writes over here on page 92. What about a soldier who is summoned in an emergency to report for duty on Shabbat or Yom Tov? Like they had on the Simchat Torah, everyone had to get up and they had to all run, right? And come to their bases and stuff like that. Let's say, now he has to take his go bag. He has a soldier bag. He also wants to take his talit and tefillin. And he wants to take his siddur. And there's no eruv. And there's no he's outside the home. What can he do? So says Rabbi Yosef Banaro, as the Shabbat Kechata says, he can take everything he needs, including his talit, tefillin, his siddur, and he adds here toilet paper as well. Okay? You all remember COVID and how toilet paper was a commodity. Not something to joke about. It's a very important necessity. All right? He can take it all. He puts everything together in his knapsack. If he needs to leave the Eruv or Techum, he should try to put the knapsack into a vehicle and not carry it himself. If possible, he can put it on something else, let it go, rather than himself carrying it. Again, it's all nefesh over here, and he'll be able to go and do what he has to do. Again, military summons are not just summoning you for no reason. It is a scary situation. Okay, now we come to one of the most important topics of all this, is the Jews come to help each other out. There's a Pekuach Nefesh situation. So you had a Hatzalah, right? A Hatzalah came, they saved this guy. They took him to the hospital. And you're allowed to do it. Why? Because it's Pekuach Nefesh. Now, they've done the job. They brought the guy there. They saved him. There's no more Pekuach Nefesh at this moment. So, can they drive back? So he's saying for the next one, Baruch Hashem, today you have 100 Hatzalah members. Everyone's ready to go. So I'm not really needed. They have 10 trucks. I didn't take it in the truck. I took it in the van, whatever it was.
You go back with the car. Otherwise, people know what they're going to use. You're going to be stuck in the middle of nowhere. You go back to Shabbat table, Shabbat Tzurba, to Musaf, and Bekechab.
So he's saying, very good. So let's go through the sources. I will tell you. There are sources, and this one is in Masechet Eruvin. There's a Mishnah that takes us back to Masechet Rosh Hashanah. Masechet Rosh Hashanah tells us that there used to be, when you saw the new moon, you had to come to give Edut that you saw the new moon. If you saw it on Shabbat, you had to travel there on Shabbat. Now, if you're traveling from your city to the Beit HaMikdash, you're going to get out of your Techum, right? And what's the din if I left my Techum, I left my residency, my 2,000 amot, outside the city limits? What's the din at that point?
Depends if you made something there or no.
I didn't make anything.
Stuck there.
I'm stuck there. I have 4 amot where I am. That's it. I can't move. Rabbi Gamliel allowed these people who came to give edut. He gave them another 2,000 amot from their new position.
4,000 total from beginning.
No. Forget the beginning. Now they're as if they're here, and now they get a new techum. Regular techum, as now I'm here in this city. That's what Rabbi Gamliel did for them. So now, says the Mishnah in Eruvin as follows. So we're on stores 52 on page 94. It says as follows the Mishnah. One who left his techum with legal permission, he was allowed to come out, right? For example, someone who's a soldier, someone who is going to be a midwife or a doctor or something like that. Someone went to a shoot. He left out his techum to the shoot. He's allowed to come out. All right, that's all that. And now he gets there, or while he's on the way, but Amrullah, they tell him, oh, where are you going? We already saved this guy. You're going to this guy. We already saved him. We already took him to the hospital. He's already there. You're stuck now. You're in the middle, and you already left the techum. So what do? I stay there now? I'm stuck? So the Mishnah says, wherever he's right now, he gets 2,000 amot. That's his new thing. He left his techum to give him, like Rabbi Gamliel gave those who came to the Mikdash for Edut, we give them also 2,000. Then the Mishnah says, skipping a few words, Kol hayotziim lehatzil, all those leaving to rescue, chozrim limkoman, they can go back to their place. Well, I have no idea what this means right now, but that's what it seems to me, right? It says 2 things here. If I went out with the reshut and I'm outside my techum, and then I find that I don't need to be there, I have new 2,000 amot. And then it says, Kol hayotziim lehatzil, anyone goes out to save, chozrim limkoman, he can go back to his place.
No limit.
We don't know what that means yet.
No, before we said limit, not no limit.
Now that's the Gemara's question. Let's take a look in source 53. And the Gemara says, the Gemara now has a question. Okay, let's take a look 1 second. It's right over here. Hold on. Okay, take a look. All those leaving may return to their place. This means, it seems to mean, you can go as far as you need to come back, right? That's what it seems to mean. Va'afilu tuva. Does this mean it can go more than 2,000 amot? But the first part of the Mishnah said, I get 2,000 amot from where I am right now. So how are you telling me later? I mean, no, it doesn't mean you can go back to your place. When it says chozrim l'koman, that means shechozrim b'chlei zayin l'koman. You can stay in those 2,000 amot, but you can go back with your weapons. You don't have to leave your weapons and just leave it somewhere and say, I'm going to come back for it later. You can keep your weapons on you. Talking about soldiers going out with weapons. Yeah. You can keep your weapons on you. That's what it means. Versus why are you learning this way? What was the difficulty? My kushya. Dimul hatzil shani. Like Rabbi Yosef wants to say. Maybe when you're going out to save, that's different. And you're allowed to go back home. Why are you saying it's only to go back with your weapons? No, maybe. So the Gemara says, Eli kasha hakasha. If there was a question, this was the question. There was a Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah 23b that says, when they used to come to give Edut, they came to the Mikdash and they didn't move from their place. They were in the 4 amot. That's it. They couldn't move because they were outside the Techum. Rabbi Gamliel said, no, they can get 2,000 amot. They came, do the mitzvah, they came do the right thing. They give them 2,000 amot now. Below Elu Bilvad Amru, and not only on these, they said, Ela Filu Chachama. Even if a midwife comes to give birth. Oh man, the havlaat techumin romin hadleka, or from a fire. So he came to save someone from an attack, from an army, from a river, from a collapsed building, from a fire. They're like the city people, like they live here now. And they only have 2,000 in each way. So you see, the Mishnah and Rosh Hashanah says they get only 2,000 amot. And our Mishnah over here said, Chozrin will come out, they can go back to their place. So based on this is what he comes and he gives an answer. To say, what does it mean you can go back to the place? They can go back in these 2,000 amot with their weapons. Not that they can go back all the way outside the Tchum. That's what the Gemara seems to say. But Nachum Bar Yitzchak says, no, Lord Kasha, I'll explain it to you. I'm explaining it to you. What does he say? Kan shenitzchu Yisrael umat haolam. Kan shenitzchu umat haolam et atzman. Depends when. If the Jewish army won, then there's no more safek nefashot here, no more pekuach nefesh. They won, so they can only stay in the 2,000 amot. And then they get a special thing that they're allowed to go around with their weapons. But if the Jewish army didn't win, then it's a pekuach nefesh situation. Then you can go back to your cities and everything back because it's still in the danger zone. That's what Rav Nachman wants to say. So comes out from the Gemara that we have, according to what we explained, according to Rashi, is as follows. Is what? That you cannot go outside. You cannot go. That's it. You came here. You get now a new techum, and that's it. You cannot go back out. So if I drove the patient to the hospital, and it's outside the techum, I get a new techum right now, and that's it. I can't go back. Unless it's still a danger. And that's what Rabbi Yosef wanted to say. They still need me.
From the last house in the city.
Right.
If you drive to hospital, there is no end of the city.
In our situation, you're right. In our cities, it keeps going and going and going because there's no problem. But if you're living in rural places, like upstate, by the time you leave your place, say you go to the hospital, you could very likely leave the tomb. That's what the situation is. You're right. In the city, in New York City, it's not really an issue. You can walk from here to Crown Heights and back and forth, and you never left the tomb. Okay? But, okay. So from our sources, there's really no permission to go back. Unless they really need you, unless there's still danger. But we said is a case where there is no danger.
This is the city.
Mm-hmm.
Then Rabban Gamliel gave you another 2,000.
No, he didn't give them another 2,000 amot. He gave them 2,000 amot where they are now. They left it to whom? They left that white plate. They got to the Mikdash. They went to that city over there. Yeah. They left. They went to. They walked all of it out. They walked completely out. They went to another city.
That's 2,000.
Oh, we're talking about Hasalam.
Anybody. He went to the other city. Now he's there, but he came for the right reason. He came with Rishut. Really, he should be just only 4 amot, trapped. But now he can stay in that whole white city. Okay, he gets another 2,000 amot in that city, but not to go back. That's what we're saying right now. Okay, unless there's still a danger, then he can go back. That's enough one. Okay, fine. Now, the Tosefot and the Rashba say, hold on. There is one more principle in play over here. There's one more principle in play. Which one? This is something that the Gemara in Masechet Bayat tells us. Va'amar ula shlosha divarim hetiru sofan mishum techilatan. We allow the ending because of the beginning. One of them is what? Or lifnei hadursan. The hide before those who will tread on it. What does this mean? This is the story. You want to have meat for Yom Tov. You want to be able to shecht on Yom Tov. But the butchers and the owners, they don't want to do it. Why? Because when you shecht on Yom Tov, you're going to tell me I cannot treat the hide, the skin. A lot of money is in the skin. And in order when you shecht it, you have to then step on it and trample it in order to process it. If I'm not allowed to do that on Yom Tov, I don't want to shecht it on Yom Tov. And the people are not going to have Simchat Yom Tov. So they said, you know what? We allow you to put it out, let people step on it, And this way you will shecht your meat for Yom Tov. So this is what it's called. The principle is, and there's two other cases. This principle is we allow the ending because of the beginning. And this is similar to what Rav Yosef was saying before we started. He said, if you're not going to let the guy come back, he's not going to want to go in the first place. I want to come back to the Musaf. I want to come back to the Kiddush. I have my family waiting for me. They're waiting for me. I'm waiting for them. If you're going to tell me that I cannot go, I can't come back, I'm not going to go. And then what? You're putting everybody in the Pekuach Nefesh. So says the Tosafot, and the Rashba says the same thing. That what? This is one of the cases. Even though the Gemara Masechet Eruvin doesn't say this is a case of Hitiru Sofan. If I tell the guy, if you're going to go, you're going to have to stay there, he's going to say, hey, I'm not going. Let me stay here right now. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to save anybody. So this is something that we allow him to come back, because if we don't allow him to come back, he won't do the first part. And that's the famous and the Kula and the famous psak of Reb Moshe. Reb Moshe Feinstein. When they told him about this case of the Hatzalah, and there are other Hatzalah members, can they come back? And Reb Moshe was of the opinion he says you have to look at the case as follows. This is what he says. If when they went to the hospital with the patient, they said, you know what, I'm going to end up staying there their entire day, then they cannot come back, because they left with the idea they're going to stay there. But if they left with the idea, I'm going to be there 20 minutes, get the patient registered in the ED, and then I'm going to be able to come back, then they're allowed to come back. Because if you don't let them to come back, they'll never go in the first place. Yeah? Take a look in the bold on page 98. He writes, כזו שהיו סוברים שאפשר שיצטרכו לשהות שם יותר מיום השבת, אסורים לחזור לבתיהן. Then he can't go back. If he knows, I'm going to go there and end up staying there. Right? Then he's not going to go back. ואם הוא הצלה כזו שרק לזמן קצר, היו מותרים, then it's permitted. ולכאורה פירוש זה מוכח בגמרא. And that's the way Tosfot and Rashba understands the Gemara. That if they went, they're allowed to come back, because they only went for a short while. Right? That's the way they explain it. Even when we need to carry weapons in the street, it'll be mutar. So you have Rav Moshe, who gives this kula, that if there's only planning to go for a little bit, they're allowed to come back. Okay, read from over here. Although, according to Rashi, one may never return home if this is outside the tchum and the danger is over. According to other Rishonim, when one travels expecting the task to be completed on Shabbat, he may return home even if this involves violating a biblical malacha. Because I wouldn't go if I knew I couldn't come back. All right? So this is the Rav Moshe's psak that many Hatzalas rely on, based on the Rashba and the Tosafot. But there is other opinions. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, he says there is no permission to drive back. There is no permission for Hatzalah to drive back. If there is no danger, and he's not really needed, they have more Hatzalah members, and they have more Hatzalah trucks, and he's not really needed, he's not allowed to drive back once he left it to home. He can't go, he can't come back. He has to stay there. He's no return. And he says there is a Hatam Sofer that allows them to come back with a goy. And he says, really, I don't hold of this Hatam Sofer. But Hatam Sofer said it, we're going to have to let it go. We're going to allow it. Hashem didn't want them to come back. And he also called those who said, oh, if I don't come back, I won't go. He calls them people with lightheaded, and they're not really so Shomer Shabbat, they're not even interested in halacha. Because if they were interested in halacha, they would never even think about coming back. That's pretty much what he says over here. You go through the Arichas over here on page 99. He's not happy with those who say that they have to come back. But he relies on the Hatam Sofer to say that a guy can bring them back. The majority, if you take a look at page 100, the majority of contemporary poskim really agree with their Shlomo Zalman that you're not allowed to do melacha, to drive your car, to come back after the case of Pekuach Nefesh. But there are those, like the Orchot Shabbat, that say, in today's day, these are not lightheaded doctors. They're not lightheaded and say, listen, if you don't let me go, if you don't let me come back, I'm not going to go. They really want to keep Shabbat. But it gets difficult. He writes over here, Orchot Shabbat, look at page 100 over here. There's a real concern that if we do not permit to return to their place, they will refrain from traveling another time. Sometimes they'll shut off their communication device. I don't want to be bothered. Right? I don't want to get in there. I'm going to get stuck there. I'm going to have my Shabbat. Some report, he says, that the Hazon Ish would say that one should not tell a doctor who travels on Shabbat to care for a sick person from returning home by car. You shouldn't tell him this because you don't want him to not be able to treat someone later. So you have the Rav Moshe, right, based on the Rashba and the Tosafot, and Hazon Ish says, rely on that. You can rely on that. And the Griz of Brisk, Rabbi Yitzchak Zev Soloveitchik, also said this, that you're allowed to come back. You're allowed to come back because otherwise they wouldn't go. Rav Bleich, he says that there's actually communities where they didn't follow Rav Moshe Tzak for the Hatzalah, and they had a very hard time getting Hatzalah members to join, especially for Shabbat. Who wants to go and not be able to come back? Okay? So that's the fact that many Hatzalah organizations rely on, is the fact that if I knew in advance that I can't come back, I'm not going to go in the first place. And they hold the Rav Moshe that you're able to come back. Fine. Now, what about Rav Hershel Schachter here deals with another case? What about if there's a doctor on call or a nurse that needs to go to work on Shabbat and they already dealt with, they already talked to their Rav and stuff like that? Can they drive back from work? So Hatzalah, we said maybe we have Rav Moshe to rely on. What about them? They're finishing on Friday night or whatever it is. It's already Shabbat. Rav Schachter says no. Because L'maaseh, you cannot say, oh, I'm not going to go back to work on Friday because otherwise I'm not going to be able to come home. They can't say that. Why they can't say that? Because they're getting paid for it. That's their money, right? So they're not going to say, I'm not going to do it. I say if you're in such a job that you need to work on Shabbat, you're still going to do it because that's your parnasa. And then the last two pieces over here, he actually brings real cases of people who were on the fence about the military jobs and other jobs like this, because if they knew they would go, they're not going to be able to come back on Shabbat. They didn't want to go in the first place. And so, in the end of the day, we have the psak of Rav Moshe that they could come back. When one travels expecting the task to be completed on Shabbat, he may return home, even if this involves violating a biblical malacha. That's a Rav Moshe, and that's the most Hatzalah, and those who have to drive on Shabbat rely on. Again, if it's a paid job, like a doctor or a nurse or stuff like that, or according to Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, you want to go to Hatam Sofer, which was what? To have a guy drive us back. That would probably be the better way of doing it. But if not, you have what to rely on with Rav Moshe. Okay, we'll end over here.
You're weight on the car, you're burning more gas.
Yeah, you should slim out. You should slim out. Very good. Very good. Okay, we'll end over here.